Voice of 170 is like, yes, I'm still. I so good that.
My apprentice in Samoa. My one-man
Hi everybody. How's it going? Awesome. Cool. So I'd like to welcome you to my team. What I've done is I've prepared some of my experiments and some new thoughts on where the project should go. To start off with, I just want to invite you guys to help yourselves to what I've made. And then afterwards we're just going to have a quick chat about where the project's going. So, help yourselves.
Share with me. How are you? How are you?
You got a link, I think.
Claire, would you like to share with us?
I would love to share with you.
Yes?
I'm trying to
Have you got jelly?
Oh, look at that.
Rock, have you had a morsel?
No, I haven't. I'm going to try one.
We'd like to have a bright
I'd just like to know that no fire alarms have gone off.
That's amazing. Good fish.
Really nice.
Tastiest crab I've ever been to.
Like there's heaps of them.
Nah, I'm all good. Yeah. I'm gonna have feed at work later.
We're just doing the webcast on
They must be watching on Lex.
So, I was going to talk briefly about how all of this kind of came about. One of my experiments not so long ago was looking at ways that I could get take something that was quite quintessentially Kiwi, or we've made it quite Kiwi, and try and get people, have some kind of provocation to talk about what it means to be a New Zealander, to talk about a history, and to talk about what it means to be a citizen in New Zealand in the 21st century. A lot of my reading has been about what the last 150 years has been like in New Zealand. And basically we're a country of a lot of little different countries. So we're basically an immigrant nation that kind of that's kind of all together, and our future is still in people coming to New Zealand to make something, to make a better future for themselves. What I did in one of these experiments was make fish and chips, and what I did was I took provocative things in the newspaper, and I tried taking headlines, imagery, and articles that would spark some kind of conversation. I tried putting them in and wrapping the fish and chips in that paper, and then hopefully that would have some kind of conversation trigger. The feedback we got from it, from that experiment, was that, okay, when I was cooking the fish and chips, everyone was attracted by the smell, which you guys probably were, made you come here. So everyone's excited to open the parcels. They're excited to exchange the contents within the parcels, and there were unexpected kind of things like the apple fritters and stuff like that. And it was a really, really light-hearted exchange of food and experience. The concept of degustation, which is slowing down the food by using smaller portion sizes to have a little bit at a time to kind of make the experience kind of drawn out, was something that I could explore a little bit further. Yeah, so after doing a little bit of thinking about what the purpose of the design was about, I decided to include something that was very, very Kiwi, which is pineapple, and what I like to call Pineapple Republic, which is basically and a whole lot of sticks, put at obtuse angles, and basically the idea being that if a constitution and New Zealandness in the 21st century is about acceptance, intimacy, shared destiny, and inclusion, and also shared workload, then we should all work together to try and break this thing up. And we all come in at different angles as well, and in the end we all get to enjoy bits and pieces, and we get to share as well. So it's trying to take political ideas or political ideals and translating it into our experiences with food, which is what I'm trying to accomplish. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment and what I've been doing. Just trying to take food and observe how people interact with it, and then try and translate political ideas into the experiences we have with food as well. Cool. Oh yeah, okay, cool. So, moving on from newspaper articles, I decided to jump on things that we need to consider about a new constitution and about things in the 21st century for New Zealand. So, stuff like the treaty, the Waitangi, or Te Tiriti, and the role that it has in the new constitution, and what role it really has in each of our lives day to day. Try putting some infographic kind of stuff. It's not really infographic, it's just a graph, really. But it shows unemployment figures from 1987 to 2002. So ever since the big stock market crash in the 80s. Also, asking the question, what makes a good New Zealander? And things like the national anthem, how we're a bilingual nation, but we're also a nation with Christian roots as well. And also just thinking, what role does the treaty have, or what role does any of this have in our lives? So just trying to amp up the provocation in the wrapping of the food.
So in this essence of collaboration and sharing, in the spirit of that, I'd just like to share my experience, which was that I picked up a package that was wrapped with the word, the only visible word was treat. And I thought that was a really nice experience. Thank you.
If I can be honest, I didn't read the papers at all because it was such a greasy mess. So I was wondering, but I think the idea is really good. It's really there. So I was wondering maybe if there's another way of drawing attention to that souvenirs, just to say, read it before you eat it.
Yeah.
You have to look at the taxation of connecting fish and chips in the newspaper, and which I suppose it was. I missed the message as well.
performance?
I think more and more, talking to Claire, I think more and more it is kind of a theatre, there is a lot of theatre around it, and it could be well and truly on this way to performance type.
So in that regard, I offer similar observations about my experience. I had to think about how I got into the space. So it was bounded, and I had to transgress a space that is not mine, but I kind of knew how to get around it. So, but that one doorway offers you an opportunity to initiate the performance, to start it. And then the classic sense of performance might be, say, well, how do you conclude it, or what is the conclusion like? Does it dissipate? And I think that what you've set up here, which Sinji is pointing to quite clearly, is that there seems to be a relationship between text and very interestingly graphically laid out on paper, which is part of the kind of iconic fish and chips scene. But how much does that drive, does the text drive the sharing, the intercommunication, the exchange, relationships? And how did this whole thing work out spatially? Because if your cooking platform had been central and we had been like, that would be more like the barbecue, right? So I think that kind of maybe taking the paradigm of performance will help you sharpen it. But here's some concerns, is that when a design student who hasn't done performance before leaps into a master's project that is performative based, there's a lot of uptake. I'm in that way in my research right now too. So I think that working with your supervisors to figure out how you navigate that would be really important.
Yeah. Okay. I guess it's just searching for that provocation, that way of kind of just jump-starting the conversation about constitutional issues that is probably not really moving forward.
So, because it wasn't until Karen was standing here as I walked into the room that I thought actually this process of him cooking is actually part of the whole that hasn't been before. So up till now it has been him cooking somewhere else and then delivering food. But actually there's something very New Zealand about the nature of barbecuing or cooking fish and chips around with a group of people who are also sharing it. And I think you could bring it in, but I do recognise that it is going to be much more difficult. But I think the worry for me still is that people are not standing talking about the Constitution. They're not using the words on a piece of paper as a method of getting into a conversation. So you're going to need to have some other intervention, which could be, if it was people standing around, you might need a plant or two. So somebody's actually opening up a piece of paper and saying, oh, this is interesting, Julia, what do you think about this? So that she's engaging more with the message rather than just eating from it. So there's something more needed.
The name of the food is quite good. You know, you go to some thematic restaurants and all their food's kind of named in a certain way. It's always like a play. Like what you had going on with this pineapple, what do you call it? Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And if I know it was called that, then I'd start kind of inquiring.
So there's all the things like the recipes, the invitation to this event is an opportunity for you to spark the labeling.
The text on the sticks.
I wanted to laser etch some stuff onto the sticks.
The carving into the orange peel. Yeah,
tablecloth, just a whole lot of things that are going to need to.
And especially as the audience grows, with that intimate group, with your last, trial of this, it worked really well because a conversation formed around food. And the difference here is separate groups formed, taking away a sort of icon of Kiwiness to have their own little individual conversations rather than drawing on your original sort of Christian sort of agape thing of a conversation around food. It became far more discrete people. So rather than the food being the hub, there was a really change, and that hub was what gave you the last example, a chance to curate and intervene and be a little more designerly in how that theatrical moment unfolded. So rather than being serendipity, it became a little bit more interventionist, where you could stage little moments. And if you are drawing on transformational design theory, that is what we do. We stage little moments within experiences in order to achieve something. So so I found myself unwillingly sort of with groups of like people and seeing other groups of like people rather than, a whole gathered, different people, disparate people gathered around the food. So it was quite different from the last one in that regard.
Okay.
Food was no longer the hub.
Kieran, I think it's something that in your question, to be even asking the question, what makes it a New Zealander. So in that context of good, the word good and goodness, we have in the unsaid something about manners and how we regard each other. And if you're hosting and performing, I'm not sure if I'm part of the exhibition or whether I'm, just enjoying your hospitality and say thank you, Kieran, that was really lovely there. Or, it's unclear my response as a good New Zealander or not, how I should respond in terms of manners.
And even things like the filming comes into play with that. You have a completely different, less candid response as soon as there's that documenting eye, unintroduced by the host.
I'm interested in the fact that all of the food is delicious. And is that the right way to talk about a constitution? Because is it all about enjoyment?
Where's the grist?
Is some of it a bit yucky or a bit challenging?
Yeah, I guess that's
Maybe eating orange was challenging, but I think this is quite safe. As far as the taste of it, I mean, it's really fun.
It's like those jelly beans where you get the rogue ones, which are...
Yeah, exactly.
I was kind of aiming for a big mess afterwards. Because I guess the whole exchange of values and opinions and that kind of stuff is a messy thing to deal with. And then I guess...
But are we going to clean it up or are you going to...
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so...
I think that goes back to Tulia's point. I'm wondering if there is, first of all, I don't know if there is a good New Zealand thing. I'm still searching for it. But is there a default? If we all look into ourselves, did we fall into a default way of behaving? Because maybe you didn't give us something that made us question how we should behave. We just kind of lapsed into what we normally do in this space, is eat and drink.
Right.
So I felt rude just finishing and sitting down and not going up to you as someone who made me food to say thank you. I could have taken that opportunity, but I'm still kind of not sure if I'm, being filmed for being a dick or what. I don't know.
And Kieran, I had an interesting conversation in a group of people where someone said, I feel a little bit like I'm being bribed to talk about the Constitution.
That was me. I thought it was a bit like when you go at the start of semester and there's the Christian group giving ice creams and you don't know they're a Christian group, so you got your free stuff and you're like, it's a bit right, but I guess it's how it's set up, Like if I'd known that I was coming here to talk about the Constitution, then that would be up front.
So that's part of the invitation.
That can also be part of like a cultural experience, right? Because in some countries, if you engage in politics and discussions, to have something like this served as like a gesture of appreciating people to come, which in some countries we eat fish and chips, that is probably a far more thing that wouldn't have a cultural element to it. So if I look at this as a constitution, well, someone is new from the boat, and like you opened the sort of your presentation. For me, the most interesting things is like the sort of the thing on the right and the left, because after quite some time in the UK, I've had lots of fish and chippies, but yours are far better. But I think the most interesting thing for me really was this element, and so if I relate this back to some of the things that you were talking in the Constitution, I think there's some juicy bits in there. We're in a food discourse here that is quite unique about in the position that New Zealand, as a country is, which the tradition of fish and chips couldn't offer, but the tradition of this food and some other foods, I think there's like a quite interesting pathway that could be explored.
Okay.
Maybe in the analysis, maybe if you ever come across with the relational aesthetics, sort of framework that talks about these sort of performance-like elements.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
book. Sorry. Book.
Aotearoa.
Yep. Quite small orange book.
In fluxus.
Sorry?
In fluxus. I've written them all down.
Awesome. Yeah, I felt like when I introduced it, I needed to say like a local or like a phrase or something before we all started. I wasn't quite sure how to introduce it.
But that would have, I note that would have been a marker for us about how things might proceed.
Yeah.
I think doing that and then throw a wrench into the system
Right.
would be something interesting to test.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's around ritual, because that's more like ritual rather than necessarily eating it, but it's, yeah, and then disrupting it somehow.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Right. So did everyone enjoy the food?
Very nice, thank you.
Awesome.
I think it will be pivotal the moment you invite or we go to the table to help you prepare. I think that will be really significant.
Yeah.
When there's that change, instead of being our host, that you're the catalyst for us preparing together.
Yeah.
That might be an avenue.
Yeah. Right. Well, there's still heaps left, so